I'd like to thank you for joining us today for another teaching, a very important teaching, to the follow-up that I did for the sheriffs and the law enforcement of the counties just a few weeks ago. The Republic is in trouble. America is in deep trouble. And what we have to do, as we will do tonight, as we did then, we want to take and forget about this Democrat-Republican division among our people. And we want to put it into the corner, and we want to talk about the salvation, the security, the redemption of America itself back to the Republic. For there has been created deep divides among the people deliberately. It's a military move as to divide and conquer. They have divided America up in so many pieces of pie, you can't even count it. You got the Republican Party, the Democratic Party, the Libertarian Party, the Green Party, and all the rest. Then you divide the people up to being Chicago Bear fans, Detroit Lion fans. Then you beat them up, the Knights of Templar, the Jesuits. I mean, everyone, they're divided up like a whole piece of pie cut in so many pieces. And to forget the fact that we are Americans on the soil. So we want to remember this tonight. You see, America is in dire straits. In all ways, in all sectors. And we have a teaching and a study here tonight that is going to be directed into this and why we are in dire straits. But you know, before you can really understand sometime what is really going on around you, you've got to go back into history to look at historicity, the time, the place, the pictures, and the events thereof, to understand what's really going around you now and what's taken place to you. Because what I am going to discuss today is not taught in the schoolrooms anymore. It's not taught on the campuses and at the universities anymore. For the simple reason, if it were taught, the people would recognize the danger that is upon America and why America is being decimated in all sectors at this time. Our teaching today is the Eternal Enemy of America 2013. We're bringing it right up to date. We're going to talk about an internal enemy. And you know, you veterans and you police officers and you sheriffs and you state troopers, you took an oath to protect America from foreign and domestic enemies, internal enemies. Well, the playing is over. The time for good times and putting aside your responsibility is over. Because if you don't do it and get it over, America will fall like a ripe fruit. I'm Dr. James P. Wickstrom, P.O. Box 308, Linwood, Michigan 48634. My website is www.jameswickstrom.com. It is Saturday, February 9, 2013. If you want to Google me up, go to Google, the search engine on your computer, go into James P. Wickstrom, and you'll find that I am one of the most avid anti-communists in the United States of America. Because I understand the enemy. Not only who they are, but what they have done, and what they're planning to do. Jewish Bolsheviks, they murdered 60+ million in Russia and the Ukraine from 1917 to 1987. You see, I wanted to make sure you saw the 1987 because that wasn't too many years ago, was it?
Right. Modern.
But the slaughter started in 1917 of the white Christian Russians and the white Christian Ukrainians. By the Bolsheviks, they tell you that the Bolsheviks overthrew white Christian Russia and the Tsar. If you don't understand history, you are doomed to repeat it.
That's right.
The bloodiest and most destructive racial and political movement in world history, Bolshevism. The world has begun to awaken to the horror of the atrocities perpetrated in the Soviet Union, the former Soviet Union, and elsewhere under the rule of communism. And yet few understand the depth of the evil involved, the source of ideology, and its true goals. Though suppressed in our schools and in our education in America today, the undeniable facts are that communism is a Jewish ideology and a movement inspired by Talmudic Judaism. See, they read out of their book, the Talmud. We Christians read out of the Bible. Because, see, the Bible with the Christ has nothing to do with Jews, and the Jews have nothing to do with Christ, because they're the Christ killers. Right. And created and led by ethnic Jews for the purpose of mass genocide and destruction, and for the former achievement of their planned New World Order. I want to state this. I want to be totally, unequivocally clear here, that I and what I will show tonight as evidence, I dare anyone to dispute me on what I will reveal and make known in this teaching. I care not what degree you have. Doesn't matter to me whatsoever. The origin of communism. Communism is hatched 1848 with a pact with Satan. This is Karl Marx. But years ago, even in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, before they took all of this understanding away from the textbooks in our educational sector, they told you that Karl Marx was the originator of communism. That's not true. Also not true, that wasn't his name. That was his pen name. His real name was Moses Mordecai Levy, the grandson of a Jewish rabbi. The Jews Karl Marx, Moses Mordecai Levy, born in Germany, and Frederick Engels penned the Communist Manifesto. But it goes much deeper. Behind these two, the communist conspiracy is being directed and funded by other influential Jews, all the way up to the immensely powerful international house of Rothschild, who owns all the central banks of the world, including the private Federal Reserve Bank in America, controlled Jewish banking cabal, the architects of the infamous New World Order conspiracy, or the one world government. Marx and his Jewish cohorts and his elite Jewish backers, especially on the East Coast of the United States, as adepts of the true nature of satanic Babylonian Talmudic Judaism, are devoted followers of Satan who intend to set the world aflame in an orgy of terror, mass murder and bloodshed, and destruction. Marx, alias Moses Mordecai Levy, wrote poems about his desire to, quote, bring the world to ruin, unquote, and to lure mankind into the abyss in the company of Satan and follow after with laughter on his lips. Judaism is Satanism. Jews today are of Turco-Mongolian blood. They are not of white European blood or of white European ancestors. A lot of them look white because they interbred with white Europeans, but they are still Turco-Mongolians. You have heard for many years that the Asiatic would rule the world in the end time. They just didn't tell you it was the Turco-Asiatic Jews that they were talking about. So everyone took for granted it would be the Chinese. The religion called Judaism is not the religion of the true Israelites or the descendants of a man renamed Israel of the Old Testament, but rather Babylonian occultism, the most holy book in the religion of Judaism is called the Babylonian Talmud. It teaches that the Jews are destined to rule the world and inherit the wealth of the world and enslave all the non-Jews, or whom they call Goy, and that only Jews are human, with non-Jews being subhuman cattle, Goy, who exist only to serve Jews. The Talmud espouses vicious hatred for Christians and non-Jews, including teaching that Jesus is in hell, being boiled in hot excrement, and that Jews may exploit, rob, and kill non-Jews. The stated and the real aims of communism. Here we have a picture of Vladimir Lenin. Lenin was a butcher, and he was an adept follower of Marx, alias Moses Mordecai Levy. Here we have the rifle butts. Here we have the hot pokers. And here we have the killers, all right, of Lenin and his murderous horde of the pictures. Here we have one throwing an old potato masher they used to call a grenade. Communism calls for the overthrow of all existing governments and religion, including Christianity. The lofty talk of a socialistic utopia for the working class is just a bait to trick the masses into revolution and installing the tyrannical Jewish leaders of the communist movement into power. The ideology is merely a vehicle for the annihilation of the Western Christian civilization and the achievement of world Jewish conquest. Now you're saying to yourself, well, if we have all these problems in America, why are you going back to tell us this? Why don't we talk about America? Oh, we'll get there. We're going to get there, but you see, unless I set a foundation for you to understand the basis of the destruction and who's behind it, you won't fully grasp what's taking place against you in the United States today. And who's in political office today in Washington, D.C., perpetrating these things. And in your state capitals. Moses Hess, the illusionist, Freemason, and founder of Zionism and socialism. Moses Hess was the teacher of Karl Marx and Engels. This is the Jew who actually was the teacher of what we call Talmudic communism, the Antichrist, to Marx and Engels, and which prompted them to pen the Communist Manifesto under alias names. This is the mastermind of modern day communism and the modern, or the we should say the aspect of mental thought back in 1917 therein, which constituted the death of over 60 million men, women, and children in the world, including our soldiers on the rocky slopes of Korea, our soldiers in Vietnam, all the innocent people, men, women, and children of Bulgaria, Hungary, Estonia, Latvia, Germany, all of these countries that were annihilated and butchered. It came from the mind of this Jew right here. And it's still being performed around the world. Karl Marx was merely the protege and the minium of another Jew in Germany called Moses Hess, who initiated Marx, alias Levy, into socialistic doctrine as well as the Freemasonic lodges. Hess is one of the founders of socialism, communism, and Zionism, and was connected to the Illuminati. The Jewish Illuminati and Freemasons used communist ideology to camouflage their goals of promotions of atheism, destruction of individual liberties, consolidation of wealth and power in the hands of the Jews, and enslavement of the masses. Now I know that some of you out here that will be watching this, whether on public service TV or wherever, hopefully in all the sheriff's offices of America, or wherever in your living room, or wherever, if you're a Freemason, I suggest you depart from that organization, because I'm giving you the foundations of what and who created it. Hess conceived socialism or communism as a way to agitate the social classes one against the other in order to prevent their cooperation as to divide and conquer. He stressed that socialists and communists have nothing to do with nationalism. Well, of course they have nothing to do with nationalism, because if we, as true Americans, stand up for America and for the Republic and for our organic documents of the Articles of Confederation of Perpetual Union, the Declaration of Independence, the Bill of Rights, and whatever else, now we're being nationalists as true Americans. These Jews can't stand that, because now we are coming to one mind, one mindset, that we will not be divided into destroying our own country. However, as an adherent of Talmudic Judaism, he supported an intense nationalism for the Jews called Zionism. And you know what's very ironic? All over America, including Midland County, probably Bay City County, you got all these ministers of Judeo-Christianity going down to have lunch with the local rabbi and the local cantor from the synagogue. And he's playing them like a cat plays with a little mouse. And they have no idea the ultimate goal of Talmudic Judaism, of the synagogue, is to obliterate and destroy Christianity and the faith of the white European people in the United States and every country in the world. The Communist Revolution in Russia, White Russia. Early Jewish attempts at revolution in White Russia. Next. Throughout the latter half of the 19th century and into the early 20th century, prior to the 1917 revolution, Jews were agitating, plotting, and attempting anti-Christian communist revolution in Russia, such as the 1905 revolution, initiating assassinations, including that of Tsar Alexander II in 1881, riots, terrorism, and murder. This resulted in pogroms against the Jews by the Tsars and the white Christian Russian people. And we can't forget that without some type of movement or some type of actions that have to be taken, they always have to be bankrolled. If you don't have any money, you can't succeed in what? Obtaining your objective. And the more money you have, it's easier to obtain your objective, isn't it?
Oh, yeah.
So, international Jewish banking elite funds the Jewish Bolsheviks revolution. Like J.P. Morgan, Mr. J.P. Morgan. All right? And the Jewish controlled and owned banking banks, J.P. Morgan, Goldman Sachs, on the east coast of the United States of America, using American deposits by the American people to fund the slaughter and the butchering of the white Christians in White Russia. Next, please. Now, if you're a sheriff or anyone else watching this, I'm just hoping that you have enough strength that you will watch the whole presentation here so you get a good grasp about what's going on around you, because I'm not just staying in 1917. I'm coming right up to 2013 and what's going in. And this also involves the planned gun grab by all the Jews in Washington, D.C., Boxer, Feinstein, Schumer, you name it, Pelosi, Why they want the guns? Because they're all Jews. And they want to disarm America. Like they disarmed white Christian Russia before the slaughter took place. And then they set up gulags up in Siberia. Just like the Federal Emergency Management Agencies have hundreds of gulags already built all over the United States of America in preparation for this. A cabal of wealthy and powerful Jewish financiers and bankers, including Rothschild agents, Jacob Schiff and Max Warburg, being the initiators of the Jew communist ideology for the purpose of their planned New World Order of world Jewish satanic conquest, funded the Jewish Communist Revolution in Russia. It was funded right out of the United States of America, again using all the white European deposits at J.P. Morgan or wherever else. They took the money and they sent it and they financed the butchering and the slaughter of the white Christian Russians in White Russia. Jacob Schiff arranges for the Jewish revolutionaries such as Leon Trotsky, whose real name was Lev Ivanovich Bronstein, to come to New York City for training and sends them to and against white Christian Russia. Trotsky recruited expatriate young Russian Jews from New York's large Russian Jewish immigrant population and trained them as revolutionaries. The Jew Warburg arranged for Vladimir Lenin to be transported through Germany to Russia in a sealed train to lead the Bolsheviks conspirators. So here we have the training, the financing, and all the major assassins were trained in the lower south side of the Bronx on the East Coast. And how do I know that? Because I have a copy of the congressional records in my library, of which was hidden under U.S. whiskey interests. But I have a copy in my library to prove that all the financing and the training of all the top revolutionaries and the executioners was done in the south side of the Bronx on the east coast of the United States. Next. So we have the 1917 to 1918 Jewish Bolshevist Revolution. Next, please. This revolution is not Russian, but was nothing more than a Jewish takeover of White Russia. The Bolsheviks, Jewish terrorists, brutally slaughtered Tsar Nicholas II and his entire family. They rifle-butted the daughters and the children to death, and they also stabbed them with their bayonets. Then they burned their bodies. They overthrew the provisional government in St. Petersburg, seized control of the country, established the Cheka, the dreaded Jewish secret police, predecessor to the NKVD and the KGB, to quash any dissent and murder millions of those who dared to resist. Kind of reminds me of the Patriot Act that they passed. And it kind of reminds me of these other organizations out there now who are purchasing 1.4 billion rounds of ammunition, called what? Who did that? Who was responsible for buying all that ammunition?
FEMA.
The what?
FEMA.
The FEMA, the Federal Management,
Federal Emergency.
the Emergency Management. And they didn't buy 1.4 million rounds to pass out to the people in America to defend themselves.
No, they run it for use.
And they didn't build all these gulags all over the United States of America to put dissidents in who speak out against them. I know all about their gulag. Here we have a 1919 U.S. Army intelligence on the Jewish role in communism. This is a letter right here, and I'll be getting into this. I just want to show it, okay? This is a letter. It was sent out of White Russia. There was a group of an expeditionary U.S. military force in Russia watching what was happening and what was taking place in Russia at that time, sending messages back to the United States of America to tell them what was going on. U.S. military intelligence officer, one Captain Montgomery Schuler, sent 2 reports to Washington, D.C. in March and June of 1919, describing in graphic detail the Jewish role in the Russian Revolution. Both these reports were only declassified in September of 1957. And the originals are still held in the U.S. National Archives in Washington, D.C., open for public inspection. The first report that was sent by U.S. military intelligence out of White Russia back to Washington was sent from Omsk on 1st of March 1919. It contains the following paragraph. Quote, "It is probably unwise to say this loudly in the United States, but the Bolshevist movement is and has been since its beginning guided and controlled by Russian Jews of the greasiest type." The second report, dated 9 June 1919 and sent from Vladivostok, said that of the, quote, "of the 384 commissars, there were 2 Negroes, 13 Russians, 15 Chinamen, 22 Armenians, and more than 300 Jews of the original 384 commissars that overthrew and butchered the white Christian Russians. Of the latter number, 264 of the Jews had come to Russia from the United States since the downfall of the imperial government of white Christian Russia." Now this is very important, because this is diversity here. See, there were no Christian Orthodox people that were commissars left over after butchering. They were all in the gulags, or they were hung, or they were bayoneted, or they were shot to death, or they were starved to death. And who is it in the White House now that has all these commissars that don't have to answer to the U.S. Congress or U.S. Senate? Who is that has these commissars as in specific places? Would that be Barry Soetoro, alias Marxist Communist Socialist Comrade Obama?
Yep.
I believe so. Are you listening out here to me? I'm trying to really make this simple for you about, we're in deep doo-doo in America. Okay, and you're gonna, the more I go into this, the more you're gonna understand why they want the guns. Next. The Jews praise communist revolution in Russia. May 8, 1896, the American Hebrew, all right? Next. The September 10, 1920 edition of the American Hebrew Journal states the following, 1920. "The Bolshevist revolution in Russia was the work of Jewish brains." Now remember, that included the slaughter, too, of all the white Christian Russians, of Jewish dissatisfaction, of Jewish planning, whose work is to create a new order in the world. What was performed in so excellent a way in Russia, thanks to Jewish brains, and because of Jewish dissatisfaction, and by Jewish planning, shall also through the same Jewish mental and physical forces become a reality all over the world. In 1920, Winston Churchill from England acknowledges the Jewish origin of the communist conspiracy. On February 8, 1920, Winston Churchill expressed his alarm over world developments in an interview published in the Sunday Illustrated Herald of London. Quote, "From the days of Adam, Spartacus, Adam Weishaupt, a Jew, to those of Karl Marx, alias Moses Mordecai Levy, to those of Trotsky, Bela Kun, Rosa Luxemburg, and Emma Goldman, this worldwide conspiracy for the overthrow of civilization and for the reconstruction of society on the basis of arrested development, of envious malevolence and impossible equality has been steadily growing. There is no need to exaggerate the part played in the creation of Bolshevism and in the actual bringing about of the Russian Revolution by these international and, for the most part, atheistic Jews. It is certainly a very great one. It probably outweighs all others. The majority of the leading figures are Jews. Moreover, the principal inspiration and driving power comes from the Jewish leaders. And that's exactly what you have happening in the United States of America today, in Washington, D.C. Almost every chair of every committee and subcommittee in Congress and the U.S. Senate is chaired by a Jew with more loyalty to Israel, i.e. that litter box in the Mideast, through dual citizenship than they would even ever consider in the United States, because there is no nationalism within a Jew. They will sell out anybody to make a buck. They will destroy any civilization to enslave it. And this is why they want the guns. They know that a nation that is armed and a nation that will wake up to who they are and what they are doing, they are in big trouble. You ministers out there, now let this be a witnessing to you. Because, see, you've been blindsided about who's who and who the Christ killers are, and the Christ murderers, and the destroyers of white Christian civilizations in the world. And who's in charge of Hollywood out here with all their dirty, filthy movies? Who do you think's in charge of pornography? Who do you think controls all the drugs on the streets? Huh? Who do you think has all these smut magazines? Who do you think has taken out the history, the true history of America from our textbooks?
Who's got control of the media?
Who's got control of the media and the banks and the money?
Jew.
And there's a lecture forthcoming by me. I'll show you all the pictures of them in Washington and the positions they hold right today in America. And how does 3% of a nation's population, as of Jews, how do they control 75 to 80% of all the power broker positions in government?
Gee, I wonder.
There's the problem here. Here we have the Jew, Lev Devanovich Bronstein, also known as Leon Trotsky. See, the Jew is the big name changer. They like to change their names to pretend they're someone else. See? Trotsky was no different. Look at this Mongolian, Turco-Mongolian mongrel here, of Asiatic blood. He's not white. This isn't white European culture. This isn't white European honesty and integrity and honor and nobility. This is a butcher who hates anything, especially Christ himself. The Ukrainian Jew known as Leon Trotsky was born Lev Devanovich Bronstein. He was one of the leaders of the October 1917 revolution, second only to Vladimir Lenin. Trotsky served first as People's Commissar for Foreign Affairs and later as the founder and commander of the Red Army during the Russian Civil War of 1918 and 1923, funded and supplied by the East Coast Jewish bankers of the United States. Trotsky was integral in the planning and execution of the many Bolshevik schemes for mass murder and theft, including collectivization and the 1932-33 Ukrainian engineered famine. What about that famine? Well, the famine in the Ukraine, the Ukraine had a record harvest. They had so much food, they didn't know what to do with it. But they couldn't have any, because the Jews wouldn't let them eat it, and they starved 9 to 10 million Ukrainians to death when they had food all around them, and if the Ukrainians tried to eat any, they were either clubbed to death, bayoneted, or shot to death. And Stalin took the food and the other leaders and they sold it on the world market to make money. You've got two-legged devils out here running, walking among you. Judas the Iscariot was a devil. The Christ himself tells you that in the historical books. All right? This is very important. Under the Jew Valdemar Lenin, from 1917 to 1924, 9 million deaths of white Christians of Russia. Next. Born Valdemar Ilyich Ulyanov, Lenin was a Jewish. Maternal grandfather was also a Jew. He led the Bolsheviks in the 1917 to 1980 takeover of white Christian Russia and headed the Soviet state from 1917 to 1924. A merciless, bloodthirsty psychopath who loved to terrorize and murder innocents. Lenin issued the decree creating the Cheka, ordered the slaughter of Tsar Nicholas II and his family, and organized the Red Terror with Stalin, and issued the orders to crush dissent by terrorizing and murdering those or anyone who opposed the communist revolution, just like any of us who rise up and explain the truth of what's going on in America. They want to sick some federal agent or agency after you to shut your mouth, to tell you to shut up. Well, I'm not going to shut up.
Praise Yahweh.
Because I know my enemy. And you federal agents, why don't you quit your job and join we true Americans against those communist Jews running Washington, D.C.?
Exactly. Hate these guys either, are we?
Approximately 9 million deaths occurred under Lenin from 1917 to 1924 due to the Civil War of 1918 to 1923, resulting in famines and dissident massacres. Oh, you spoke out against Jewish communism? If you wore a cross, you died. If you were caught with the Bible, you were put to death. And then they even tried to force the white Christian Russians to speak Yiddish for 2 years, trying to make it that language of white Russia. All of this has been removed from your history books in America, whether high school, colleges, universities. It's all been removed. Up to now. Now it's being revealed in the name of Christ himself. For everything is for you to know and to understand. They have bound us long enough to sap our strength. If we allow the Jew to come in and take our weapons and to bind us, it's going to be another 1917 White Russian slaughter and revolution in America. The 1918 to 1923 Civil War, an orgy of murder, extreme torture, and pillage. This is what you're going to see all over America if they take your guns and they take your ammunition. You're going to see people who can't defend themselves. In here are men and women and little children all over here. You better put your emotions in the garbage can for a while out here, America. You better get your priorities straight. There shouldn't be a gun left in a gun shop in America. There shouldn't be a bullet left in a goddamn ammunition store that hasn't been purchased by we the people. We true Americans who love America. They should be sold out, waiting for more to come in. There's so many being bought that the gun companies can't even keep up with the orders because the people smell a rat, and it's a two-legged rat, and it's a Jew communist rat inside of America. Now, during the 1918 to 1923 Civil War, the Jew-led Bolsheviks mercifully killed those opposed to communism and committed acts of excessive savagery intended to instill fear. Historian Eustace Smolens had this to say, and Eustace Smolens just passed away about a year ago. Quote, "The orgy of murder, torture, and pillage which followed the Jewish triumph in Russia has never been equaled in the history of the world.
Wow. Wow.
And now do you understand why they butcher the Palestinians like they do? The Palestinians throw rocks at them, and these Jews over there, compliments of the U.S. taxpayers with all their free fighter jets and tanks. They kill all these women and children and men, these Palestinians who can't even hardly defend themselves. And then they call the Palestinians the terrorists. And then they take the organs from the children and the people and the Jews do and sell them after they kill them and massacre them and burn out their cities. Your Jew-controlled news is lying to you.
Wake up.
Now, a lot of you may not like me, but you see, I don't care. I love America. I love the Republic.
Yes.
And I know that Jewish communism is the internal enemy of we, the United States of America, and we, the people.
That's right.
And they are the initiators of internal destruction to subvert our great nation at one time into the cesspool that we have to live in today.
Right.
How come I'm not invited into the classroom? Why can't I bring this in here to show the students? Because you know what I'll tell the students? I'll tell the students this. Don't you believe one word I'm going to tell you. I'm going to show you something, but don't you believe one word of what I'm going to say. I want you, after you watch this, I want you to research it yourself and see if I'm lying or telling the truth to you. And if I'm lying or whatever, I will come back and apologize to you. And when they do that, because that has happened before, as I spoke to universities before, they went out to disprove me after I left them a list of things to look up in the library at the time, before computers and that. And I didn't have to go back and I didn't have to apologize to anyone because they found out. They went to the library to disprove me, and the more they tried to disprove me, the more they realized I told them the truth. The Jews were free to indulge their most fervent fantasies of mass murder of helpless victims. Why were these victims helpless?
They took their guns.
Because they were disarmed and took their guns.
Probably starved besides.
Christians were dragged from their beds, tortured, and killed. Some were actually sliced to pieces, bit by bit, while others were branded with hot irons, their eyes poked out to induce unbearable pain. Some were nailed to the ceiling by their fingers or by their feet and left hanging until they died of exhaustion. Others were chained to the floor, and hot lead was poured into their mouths. Many were tied to horses and dragged through the streets of the city, while the mob, the Jewish mob, attacked them with rocks and kicked them to death. Pregnant Christian women were chained to trees and their babies cut out of their bodies. By Eustace Mullins, the secret Holocaust. Yeah, the secret Holocaust that the Jews never want to talk about. The Germans knew all about this secret Holocaust, and they didn't want it to happen to them. And what happened in White Russia, the White Russians were partial Prussian German. And that was their ancestors that these Jews did it to. Haven't you ever asked yourself why the Germans hated the Jews? This was the greatest Holocaust that you can imagine, second only to the Holocaust in the United States of 50 million aborted babies. Here we have another rogue. We could put Schumer in here, or Boxer, or Feinstein, or Pelosi. Pelosi's a Jewess,
Harry Reid.
a Venezuelan Jew, and she hides out in the Catholic Church.
Hillary Clinton.
They all hide out in the Catholic Church. They don't hide out in the Lutheran Church. They hide out in the Catholic Church. And guess who's going to be retiring soon? Because he got caught with his hand in the money jar.
Good. Oh,
Joseph Stalin's regime, 40+ million massacred, 1924 to 1953. Next. Stalin succeeded Lenin in 1924 and ruled as dictator of the Soviet Union until his death in 1953. There is ongoing controversy regarding the question of Stalin's ethnic origin. yet substantially evidence exists supporting that he was Jewish by race. Stalin had 3 wives, all of them Jewesses. Many of Stalin's close associates and top officials were Jewish, such as Lazar Kagnovich. Stalin was a cold and ruthless leader, described by his contemporaries as possessing an inhuman appearance and nature. Under the reign of Stalin, now I want you to really listen to me, because he died in 53. See, we're up into the 40s and into the early 50s, okay? Listen very carefully to me here. Under the reign of Stalin, an estimated 40 million were annihilated in the gulags, engineered famines, and dissident liquidations. You spoke out against Joe Stalin, you were executed or beat to death. And what are those gulags? Well, here's a gulag up in Siberia that they put people in. They didn't give them hardly any blankets or food or any clothing at all. They took them out and they worked them to death, the Jews did. Because, see, they were goy. They were just cattle, all right? But these gulags that they had in Siberia with these Jew butchers of the Bolsheviks are the same type of gulags built by FEMA camps that are already prepared in the United States of America. And they're sitting there waiting to be filled up by dissidents like me, who speak the truth to the people. Well, I'll tell you what, FEMA, you can take your FEMA camps and stick them where the sun don't shine. Because, see, I don't care. I love my country.
So be it.
I am a son of the Republic. I am a sovereign. I am not a traitor to my own flag.
You ain't an atheist.
And anyone who speaks out against the organic documents of this nation in any way is a traitor. And that includes those who want to destroy the Second Amendment and disarm the people of this country. They are traitors. They should be brought to court. And if found guilty, they should be hung.
That's right.
For treason. The Jew-controlled Cheka established forced labor camps in 1919. But the system grew to tremendous proportions during the reign of Stalin, beginning around 1930. Millions of people, mainly petty criminals, and political and religious dissidents. Oh, that means political if you spoke out against the Jew system, or if you were a Christian, you were a dissident. They were sent to construct railroads and canals, work in mines, and perform other tasks, serving the purpose of exterminating anti-communist dissidents while obtaining some benefit from them before their death. Most of the camps were located in Siberia or other remote areas of the country. Conditions in the camps were extremely harsh. Prisoners received inadequate food rations and insufficient clothing, which made it difficult to endure the severe weather and the long working hours. The death rate in the camps was extremely high. Millions perished in these camps due to starvation, disease, and exhaustion from hard labor. Many of the camps were closed down with the death of Stalin in 1953. And the Gulag system was officially dissolved in 1960, although prisons for dissidents remained until the dissolution of the Soviet Union in 1991. The killing went on.
91, wow.
Did you know where the largest FEMA camp is for the dissident Americans when the Jews want to disarm the people and turn it into a total Jew communist nation? Do you know where the largest FEMA camp is that'll hold 2 million people? It's on the tundra of Alaska. And you ain't getting out of there. And you're not going to have much shelter. And no one's going to know about anything about you. Well, I say, let's turn them FEMA camps to be used, and let's put all the communist Jews and all those who love these communist Jews, let's put them into the FEMA camps and bring back America the Beautiful. Stalin's forced famine in the Ukraine, 1932 to 1933, 7 million died. In 1929, Stalin began a policy of confiscating land and wealthy farmers as a part of collectivism program. Those who resisted were deported to the and in fact, they wanted independence from the Soviet Union. But the Jewish communists responded by executing the Ukrainian farmers, intelligentsia, and the leaders, and then seizing the food supply in order to starve the rest of the population. The Jewish NKVD secret police shot up to 10,000 Ukrainians a day. Lazar Kagnovich, the butcher, the Jew, the Turco-Mongolian. Look at the face. Look at the features. Jews are not white. They are a different species. They are the Antichrist. The Jew murders, the Christ murders. Next. Lazar Kagnovich was born to Jewish parents in modern-day Ukraine. He was a military leader during the 1917 revolution. In 1918, Kagnovich acted as commissar of the propaganda department of the Red Army. He was a close friend and associate of Stalin, and was one of the top officials in the Communist Party under Stalin's rule. Kagnovich was tasked with the implementation of the policy of collectivism in the Ukraine and annihilation of the resistance resulting in the 1932 and 1933 engineered famine. He was a commissar. He was a commissar, the same as the commissars under Barack Obama, who don't have to report to the Congress or the Senate.
Free to do their own thing.
Don't you see what they're putting in position? To when this nation finally falls, all the commissars will be in place. And they're all communists, and the vast majority are Jews, just like back then. They have not changed their plan. They have not changed their approach that they did here in White Russia. They're under the same thing. But the only thing they got here now to go against is that we have more and better communications. We got the computer system, the telephone, iPods, iPhones, and America, the United States of America, has over 500 million weapons. Here we have Gregor Yagoda. I don't have to tell you what he is. You should know by now. Let's go. Russian-born Jew, Gregory Yagoda was appointed by Stalin as the head of the NKVD, which was later called the KGB. The Soviet secret police from 1934 to 1936. He was one of the founders of the Gulag concentration camp system. Even Jewish sources of today acknowledge him as one of the greatest murderers of the 20th century. Alexander Solzhenitsyn, a white Russian of Germanic background, cites Soviet genocide at 66 million from 1917 to 1957. Alexander Solzhenitsyn won the Nobel Peace Prize. He wrote a book. Not only did he write a book, he came to the United States of America a few years ago before he died and trying to warn the people in the United States of America that the Jews here were planning the same thing they did against the white Christian Russians. In February 1945, Solzhenitsyn was arrested for writing derogatory anti-Stalin comments in letters to a friend. Convicted of anti-Soviet propaganda and sentenced by special counsel of the NKVD to an 8-year term in a labor camp. He was released from the gulags in 1953. Alexander Solzhenitsyn was awarded the Nobel Prize in Literature in 1970. He was exiled from the Soviet Union in 1974. I know what it's all about, being exiled. I was exiled from the state of Wisconsin under the threat of false imprisonment. You can't find many people who were exiled from one of the states in America, can you? But I was. And up to about 10 years ago, it was still in the U.S. Marshal's computer system. And federal magistrates who read it said, that's not possible. That can't happen here. Well, let me tell you, I can attest it did happen. So don't tell me about red, white, and blue and grandma's apple pie. Don't tell me our freedoms and liberty have been eroded. Alexander Solzhenitsyn, his novels, The Gulag Archipelago, and One Day in the Life of Ivan Denisovich, helped to awaken the West to the horrors of the Soviet Russia and the Gulag system. He came to the United States late in life, here we go, to warn the American people that they were being set up internally by the same mindset Jews internally for the same fate of the white Christian Russians in Russia. Came here to warn the people in America. University of Hawaii professor documents Soviet genocide, Jewish communist genocide, at 62 million people, men, women, and children, butchered and beaten to death, starved to death, stabbed to death, shot to death, knifed to death, axed to death, anything you can think of. Next, please. Political scientist R.J. Rummel of the University of Hawaii calculated that 61.9 million people were systematically murdered by the Jew-created and controlled Soviet Union from 1917 to 1987. That wasn't long ago, was it? Even the Jew-Israeli of the litter box in the Mideast journalist acknowledged predominant Jewish role among the Bolsheviks, admits genocide is at least 20 million. Here is a Jew who's a journalist, a prominent journalist, a Jew himself, admitted that the Jew Bolsheviks slaughtered at least 20 million white Christian Russians. Next. Seaver Polacker makes the admission, quote, turns out that Jews too, when they become captivated by Masonic ideology, can become great murderers among the greatest known of modern history, unquote. And we have historian Michael Hoffman, he's white, on the communist genocide. He said, here is the most genocidal political movement in world history, which created the largest concentration camps and the most horrendous slave labor system of the 20th century, in which millions of Christians were slaughtered. A movement staffed, like in America today, in its upper echelons by Jewish Khazars. And yet the world is comparatively silent about the Holocaust and the war crimes this thoroughly kosher system inflicted, and the identity of the persons who were its architects. None of this is in your history books. None of this is in your colleges for political science, current affairs, world history, because the Jews removed it all, because they didn't want to be identified. They didn't want it discovered that they were the communists, undermining America. They didn't want to be known that they, the communist Jews, in the Senate and the Congress, was deindustrializing the United States of America and sending our production jobs to communist China. Does it start to fit in now? Are the wheels starting to turn?
Yes.
If you don't know your enemy, you can't fight a war against them. If you don't know who your enemy is, you're defeated. The satanic Talmudic Jewish plan for the world, none other than the soldiers of Satan, of St. John 8:44 and 47, himself could have created and unleashed the most heinous genocidal killing machine the world has ever seen. The so-called Jews are not the descendants of the biblical Israelites, but rather imposters who are actually the synagogue of Satan, Revelations chapter 2, verse 9, and are literal sons and offspring of the devil of John 8:44. As with their father, their lust is to steal, to kill, and to destroy, as in John chapter 10, verse 10. Communism is still very much alive today, especially in the United States, with Jews in power in all sectors of political finance, education, religion, and it's nothing more than a further development of Judaism and the age-old satanic conspiracy, and a vehicle for implementing the satanic Jewish agenda of theft, genocide, and destruction for a new world order and or a one-world government. Yes, Holodomor, the real Holocaust, 1933. Within 18 months during 1932 to 1933, over 7 million Ukrainian, white Christian Ukrainian, men, women, and children were systematically murdered in an enforced famine created by Stalin's bloodthirsty communist regime in Moscow. No one remembers them on Holocaust Memorial Day, though. See, because Jews are not mentioned, and the Ukrainian is still far from free today. Here's Nikita Khrushchev in 1959. He came to the United States of America. I was a senior in high school, I remember it. He stood in the cornfields of Kansas. And do you know what he said in the cornfields of Kansas in 1959 in the United States of America? Listen carefully, America. And you ministers, and you teachers, and you sheriffs, and you undersheriffs, and you state troopers, and you police officers, and you veterans, listen carefully. Your children's children will live under communism. 1959. You Americans are so gullible. No, you won't accept communism outright, but we'll keep feeding you small doses of socialism until you will finally wake up and find that you already have communism. We won't have to fight you. We'll so weaken your economy until you fall like an overripe fruit into our hands, unquote, said Nikita Khrushchev, 1959. And they have accomplished it with one exception. They have not gotten the personal weapons from we the people. Thomas Jefferson, who's not even talked about in your colleges and that anymore, high school. If the American people ever allow private banks, Jew banks, to control the issuance of their currencies, first by inflation, then by deflation, the banks and the corporations that will grow up around them will deprive the people of all their prosperity until their children will wake up homeless on the continent of their fathers conquered, unquote. So every time we do something, you tell me America will do this. Oh, yes. Remember Ariel Sharon, that big fat Jew over there in that litter box in the Mideast? Ariel Sharon. What did he say? Oh, on October 3rd, 2001. That wasn't too long ago, was it? You know what he said? Every time we Jews do something, you tell me America will do this and will do that. I want to tell you something very clear. Don't worry about American pressure on Israel, us Jews. We Jews, the Jewish people, we control America, and the Americans know it. Prime Minister Ariel Sharon to Shimon Peres, October 3, 2001, as reported on the Kol Yisrael radio. So certainly the FBI's cover-up of the Jewish spy ring phone tap scandal and the Jew involvement in 9/11 of the towers proves that Mr. Sharon was correct. And why aren't the Jews ever exposed? Because all the Jews who control the committees and subcommittees in the U.S. Senate and the Congress and the White House and the churches and the newspapers and the television sets will not tell you the truth. I am here, as the Christ said, tell the people the truth, and the truth will set them free.
Yeah.
So, here we have Maurice Samuels, a Jew, in his book, You Gentiles, page 155. We Jews, we are the destroyers and will remain the destroyers. Nothing you can do will meet our demands and needs. We will forever destroy because we want a world of our own. Who do you think took prayer out of school? Oh, Madeleine O'Hare. Oh, with the Irish name, but she was a Jewess? Isn't that interesting? Who do you think took down the nativity scene all over America of the Christ child? Jews. You got one atheistic communist Jew sitting in the classroom, and now you can't say anything contrary to what they're doing because, oh my gosh, you insulted a Jew. Oh my God, you insulted the communist. Wake up! And down here we have Paul Warburg. Now I want you to really listen up. I'm coming to an end. Paul Warburg, Jewish banker of the House of Warburg that supplied a lot of the money and the killers to the Russian Revolution. Jewish banker testimony before the United States Senate, February 17, 1950. We, Jews, will have a world government whether you like it or not. He's talking to the U.S. Senate. The only question is whether that government will be achieved by conquest or by consent. Unquote. They should have took this Jew and hung him from the nearest chandelier in the hall of the United States Senate. Because he told them, if you don't turn to communism, we will bring a revolutionary force within the borders of the United States. We will conduct a war inside of America, but we Jews will have that world government, which is Judaism, Bolshevism, okay? And they let him walk back out of that U.S. Senate after that declaration in Washington, D.C. in 1950. I want you to think about these things. You see, you're going to have to start doing something yourself here. You know, your freedom and liberty goes right back on you. You want to enslave your children? You want to enslave your grandchildren? Don't do nothing. Don't say nothing. Don't get involved in nothing. Just sit and be stupid. Because that's what America's been for the last 20 years, 25 years. Stupid.
That's right.
And silent.
Who controls the...
And what we have here, who controls the economy of the United States?
The goddamn Jew.
Here we go. Summary. Jews are approximately 2 to 3% of the U.S. population. Therefore, Jews are overrepresented among the senior officials of the U.S. government, economic, financial, monetary institutions by a factor of 32.5 times or 3,250%. Now it's quiz time, because I'm coming to an end. Quiz time for everybody. Everyone who's present here, everyone who will be watching this in their office, their living room, and everything, and I'm going to allow you to answer the question when I answer it, okay? Get ready.
Yes.
Okay. It's quiz time. See if you know the answer. Here we go. Who controls the economy?
Jews!
Goddamn Jew.
Who controls Wall Street?
Jews!
Who controls Goldman Sachs?
Jews!
Who controls the American International Group?
Jews!
Who controls the Treasury Department?
Jews!
Who controls the Federal Reserve Bank?
Jew.
Jews!
Next. As far as the mass media, we're still in the quiz. Who controls big media?
Jews!
Who controls Hollywood?
Jews!
Who controls television?
Jews!
Who controls the music empire?
Jews!
Who controls radio?
Jews!
Who controls all the advertising?
Jews!
And who controls the news itself?
Jews!
Jews. Next part of the quiz. Boy, you guys are really smart. You might get an A in this quiz. How are you doing out there? Okay, here we go. Government and politics inside of America. Who controls the White House?
Jews!
Who controls the U.S. Senate?
Jews!
Who controls the U.S. Congress?
Jews!
Who controls the Supreme Court?
Jews!
Who controls the State Department?
Jews!
Who controls the Justice Department?
Jews!
Who controls the Defense Department?
Jews!
And who controls the Treasury Department?
Jews!
Boy, you're all getting an A so far. Boy, you're really primed up on this. You've listened real good to this teaching, haven't you? And now, social engineering, okay? Who controls the Ivy League schools?
Jews!
Who controls the think tanks?
Jews!
Who controls professional sports?
Jews!
Who controls the Anti-Defamation League?
Jews!
Who controls the Southern Poverty Law Center?
Jews!
Who controls the American Civil Liberties Union?
Jews!
And who is behind gun control?
Jews!
And who's behind gun confiscation?
Jews!
Yes. And who is behind the climate change hoax?
Jews!
Yes. Isn't that something? Wow. Holy smokies. Next. Now, one more part, okay? You're doing great out there. The New World Order. Who said they wanted a new will? Karl Marx. Communist Jews. Who controls the group of 30?
Jews.
Who controls the Bilderberger Group?
Jews.
Who controls the Trilateral Commission?
Jews.
Who controls the Council on Foreign Relations?
Jews.
Oh my gosh!
A plus.
A+! You got a gold star! Boy, have you ever gotten smart since we started this! All Jews. All communist Jews. The same kind of Jews that destroyed and slaughtered white Christian Russia. But you sheriffs are still out there as a vanguard against this treason. Sheriffs have risen up all over our great nation to stand up against the unconstitutional gun control measures being taken. You sheriffs now know why they want the guns. The following is a list of sheriffs and state sheriffs associations from who have vowed to uphold and defend the Constitution against Obama's unlawful gun control measures. I applaud these public servants and elected sheriffs for their courage and conviction, and police officers and state troopers. I call on sheriffs all over this nation to add their voices to the growing number of faithful protectors of our freedom. Sheriff Richard Mack, sheriffs and associations who have made public statements committing to protect their citizens. Second Amendment rights from Obama's gun control efforts will be added. Some of these sheriffs are members of what they call the CSPOA, all right? County Sheriffs of America. But inclusion in this list does not necessarily mean they are a member. The list of state sheriffs associations, all these states, every sheriff in these states told Obama, you come into our state and into our county, we will declare war on you. You send federal agents to disarm our constituents in our county, we will arrest you. The state of Utah, all the sheriffs. The state of Florida, all the sheriffs. The state of Georgia, all the sheriffs. The state of Colorado, all the sheriffs. The state of New Mexico, all the sheriffs. The state of Nebraska, all the sheriffs. Hey, Michigan, when are you going to join them? All you sheriffs in Michigan. When are you going to be added to the list to uphold and defend the Constitution and the organic documents of our republic from domestic and foreign enemies? That's what you were elected for. That's the oath you took, so help me God.
No, that's it, right there.
So the list of county sheriffs, their disclaimer. While we encourage all sheriffs, their departments, and peace officers to join the CSPOA, you can find it, you're going right on the computer, or calling any of the states I just called, all right, and talk to their sheriffs. They'll tell you who to get a hold of and how to do it. The above list was created to identify those county sheriffs who have gone on record to uphold their oath by having made public statements, written open letters, or called our office and asked to be included in the list of sheriffs and peace officers standing against gun control. This does not mean they're members of the CSPOA. So you see, the internal enemy of America, 2013, you know their agenda, you know who they are, I showed you their past, there is nothing new under the sun, and they are planning the same identical overthrow and genocide in the United States as they did against the white Christian Russians in 1917. But they just haven't got the guns yet. So with that, I want to thank you for your time. I want to tell the veterans out there, hoorah, lock and load, suck it up. We have an enemy in the land. And they will not take this nation, so help me God. Praise the Christ himself. The internal enemy of America, 2013. I'm Dr. James P. Wickstrom, P.O. Box 308, Linwood, Michigan 48634. My blog site is www.jameswickstrom.com. It's Saturday, February 9, 2013. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your consideration. And I pray that what I have talked about here tonight, I have left you with something of strength and meaning and understanding. God bless the United States of America. Thank you.